Hey, everybody. This is Steven with Poor Decisions podcast presented by Sip Kentucky. We have a really exciting episode today, and we've got a guest here with us. So we'll start by letting her introduce herself.
Hi guys, Jenny F here, coming to you guys from Dallas, Texas. We're just getting back from our trip to Bourbon Trail and really excited to talk a little bit about our experience.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us. I know you just got back home from your trip. It was about a week ago you guys were out here. So the thought with this episode today is to kind of get the firsthand experience from someone who just came out to the trail and it was their first time visiting Kentucky. And I know you were a big part of planning this trip for your group. So kind of wanted to hear like your thoughts and opinions from like the start to finish of what that process looked like for you. Um, as well as like expectations, kind of what the distilleries were like for you, how your stay outside of your time at the distillery was when you were in Kentucky. Kind of just learn a little bit about that whole process and what it felt like for you, because I know you were such a big part of planning it. But before we get into all that, on this show, we always like to start our day with what we're drinking today. So we'll start with you. What are you drinking today?
So I've actually got one of our bottles that we picked up on Bourbon Trail. So this one was from Jim Beam. It was their experimental number 9 that was finished in Sauterne wine cask. So really excited to try this one today.
Awesome. Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun. Today, I'm working with the very old Saint Nick Harvest Rye Cast Strength, which is made at Preservation, which oddly enough, we're going to be talking about today because I know that was one of the stops you made. So, can you tell me a little bit about like why you came to Kentucky to do the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in the first place? Like, what prompted this trip?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a trip that I actually planned for my husband and my in-laws because my husband loves whiskey, my in-laws love whiskey and bourbon. So I knew it was something that we would have a really fun time doing together because it was one of their hobbies that they would love to enjoy. Myself, I'm not really a bourbon drinker, so I was definitely in over my head when I undertook planning this because I'm the planner for our family. I always figure out where we're going, when we're doing it. And as I started looking online, trying to figure out how do we get there? What distilleries should we go to? How do you get in between? Where do we eat? Where do we stay? I immediately knew that I was out of my element. I didn't know anything about the history, about the brands, where makes sense, how long to time, and was just getting so overwhelmed. So I started looking at reviews at Instagram, trying to see who can help make this a little easier for me. And that's when I came across Sit. And after looking over your website, your Instagram, I just saw that it looks like everyone has so much fun with you and that you really take all of the guesswork out of planning the trip to make it just a great experience. So we reached out and told you guys some of the bottles that I knew my in-laws or my husband liked, and you guys really took it from there and planned this amazing experience for us from start to finish. And beyond just what we're doing on Bourbon Trail, you gave us recommendations on where we should stay, where we should eat, what we should do, and that was just so helpful. And for the planner and me, it was such a relief off my shoulders coming out of the holidays, having someone help plan this trip that I knew I wasn't going to be able to figure out how to do.
Awesome. That sounds great. I'm glad it kind of all worked out for you, and it's great you chose to work with SIP after reviewing like the website, seeing reviews and other people's experiences, and deciding that was the way to go with it. And so not getting too much into exactly like what happened on the trip yet, but you did end up going with a tour company and having them organize that day. If you could go back, would you do that same thing or would you change it and kind of do it yourself?
Absolutely. You need a tour
Mhm.
company. These distilleries are very remote. It's you don't have a lot of signal when you're driving around in Kentucky. Like you need their expertise guide to just get you around. They teach you so much as you're going about the community, about the history. You're basically on a guided tour the entire time with your amazing SIP guide and they just take all the guesswork. Also, who wants to have to worry about trying to find an Uber or having a sober driver? Like, it's everything you need in one.
Awesome. Cool. Well, that's great to hear. Um, and I know you came out in the winter. So what was kind of the feel at the distilleries for you with it being a little bit of a slower time of the year for us here on the Kentucky Bourbon Trail?
Yeah, I know that everyone said it's their slower time of the year, but it didn't feel like it was empty. It did feel like I was on a private tour at every distillery I went to, which is exactly what I want. I'm not going here to be at Disney World surrounded by 100 other people. Like, I wanted the experience for us to feel like we were being taken care of and getting to see exactly what we wanted. If we wanted to stop in the Rick House and ask more questions, we were able to because they weren't trying to rush us out for the next group that was coming in. And some of the distilleries even still had up some of their holiday decor. So it was nice and cozy. There were fireplaces everywhere. And what more can you ask for than a nice glass of whiskey when you're coming in from a little bit of the brisk Kentucky weather?
Awesome. Yeah, it has been brisk here recently, especially compared to Dallas. I'm sure you guys are much warmer than what we're looking at here in Kentucky. But I'm glad it was everyone felt accommodating for you and that it was still a really cool experience. So when I'm looking at your itinerary of what you did, I it looks like you guys started your day at Maker's Mark. You got some lunch, you went to Preservation, which is what I'm drinking today, finished up at Jim Beam and then made your way back, and it looks like you guys stayed in Louisville. So can you kind of talk to me about like what was that drive like between Louisville and Maker's Mark? I know it is a little bit further out there, but did it feel long? Was it boring, or what did you take away from that like beginning of the experience right from the start?
Yeah, I mean, right from the start, when the SIP guys picked us up, it was just you're getting into this nice SUV. They've got water and snacks, and it was a little bit of an early start to get out there for a full day of all the distilleries and going around. But despite the length of the drive, it felt really quick. And I think that has to say something about your tour guide. He was just so welcoming and talking to us and getting to know us, sharing stories and tips and pointing out things. It was our first time ever in Kentucky, and this was our first day of our trip. So, getting to learn a little bit about where we were, what makes it different. You guys are just so beautiful compared to what we're used to seeing in Texas and our little flatlands out here. So, that was a lot of fun, and just getting to talk and have a nice enjoyable ride as we went out there, and then seeing that first distillery pulling up to Maker's Mark. It is such a gorgeous facility, and they still had all their Christmas wreaths on their windows and their bows. It was just lovely.
Yeah. And what was that how what was your impression or feeling when you got into Maker's Mark? For me, I know when I walk in that door the first time, it feels like you're walking into like a modern art museum. Like there's all this
Oh,
beautiful like artwork everywhere, even though you've just been driving through Kentucky farmland, and it always kind of threw me for a loop.
it was definitely not what I was expecting. Like, I've done other distillery or alcohol related tours, and sometimes you're like in a warehouse. This place was beautiful, and it's exactly what you said. It's like a museum. The art that they had on the walls that they have been collecting over the years, and just the way they so thoughtfully designed it. I wouldn't have thought we were in Kentucky just by the way it looked, especially when you saw the farmlands that you're basically in going up to these distilleries. It's a little utopia there.
Awesome. So when you're going through the Maker's Mark tour, what was a big highlight for you and something that you took away from that specific experience?
I really liked going into the room and seeing all of the aging cast where they talked
Yeah.
about the different wood that they'll put in it and the ingredients to make the flavoring. Like, particularly when we started talking about this bottle that we bought later at Jim Beam, but how they talked about how you get the different flavorings, how everyone kind of starts with the same baseline, but then you can kind of take it up or down from here, and just getting to smell all that fresh oak and seeing this massive brick house that's full of thousands of cases of whiskey. It was insane.
Oh yeah, so that's the Maker's Mark where they talk about their finishing series, like through Maker's
Yeah.
46 and all the other like custom finishes they have. That is super cool to kind of learn about. Um, awesome, love that. And then you finished up your tour, you did your tasting. There's a very memorable and special thing you only really get to do at Maker's Mark, and I don't know, did you guys, anyone in your group, go ahead and dip their own bottle when you guys were there?
Every one of us in our group dipped a bottle because it's not going to Makers without dipping that iconic red bottle. I wish I had one on the counter here, but those have already been dipped into, and some were gifts that were given out. But it was so fun to get to pick out our favorite flavor or the gift that we wanted and then have that opportunity to go and dip it in. We all got our videos and putting that online. Everyone was like, that's so cool. And it's so wild that they are hand dipping these bottles.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, so when you finished up at Maker's Mark, it looks like you guys went to lunch at the Five Brothers restaurant at Heaven Hill. How was that for you guys?
That restaurant was amazing. I was kind of expecting that this is gonna be like a cafeteria style or you're gonna have like 1 or 2 options. They had a really robust menu with like a full bar, so I was able to take a break from whiskey and have a little cocktail there with lunch, but their food was so good. I highly recommend the burger if you're gonna go, and their fries were phenomenal, and got a chance to
Yeah.
do a tasting while we were there with our lunch and just continuing to compare the different brands was really fun.
Yeah, Heaven Hill has a bunch of different brands. So were you guys familiar with all the different products that they make there, or was that kind of like a learning experience too?
Definitely a learning experience for me, but I would say even my husband and my in-laws who are much more in the bourbon world were really surprised to see the number of brands that sat under. We were sitting at the bar for a little while just looking at all of the bottles that they had, and it was like, I've never even heard of this brand. So it was fun to try out some new ones that we had never heard of before, but also seeing our familiar favorites that we went there looking for.
Awesome. And did you guys have time there to go through? They have that museum downstairs. Were you able to go through that and see some of their history as well?
I love a good museum. My husband jokes all the time that if there is a sign, I will read it. So I certainly spent about 30 minutes walking through and learning about the history about the four brothers, how they got started, how their name was actually just a clerical error, but then they stuck with it. It was so fun.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a ton of fun there. It is really cool to go through that museum. I feel like every time I go through there, I take away something new and different from it. It's a lot of fun just going to Heaven Hill anytime.
Okay.
So then it looks like next on your itinerary was Preservation. So that's by far the smallest distillery you went to. In terms of that like size difference and everything, did you feel like you still had a good experience at this smaller like craft distillery?
Absolutely. I almost felt like the people at Preservation took better care of us. They were so obviously invested in their brand and in their history and wanting to make sure that people are having a great time. So, with it being the winter and the off season, we were one of only a couple of groups in there when we showed up for our tour. And this wasn't a brand that I knew anything about. And my husband had only seen a couple of times. So we were really excited to learn about it and all of the flavors that they had there. And they actually had a wide range that you could do the tastings with the tour, but then afterwards they were making different cocktails. And I even got to try something with some cider, which is my favorite. But when they added in the bourbon, it was that perfect little touch that I needed to make me warm inside and out.
Awesome. Love that. So, it sounds like even some of the other bourbon lovers weren't as familiar with that brand and their products. Did they leave and grab a couple bottles from there? Did they really enjoy Preservation?
Preservation, I think, is now one of my husband's favorites. We came home with, I don't even know how many bottles, but at least 2 from Preservation, and he's already trying to hunt down to see where we can buy it in Texas or planning on when we're going back to Kentucky to restock.
Awesome. And then you said you're from Texas. I don't know exactly like where if you guys have the farmland and stuff around you, but Preservation has those longhorns there on the campus. Did you guys get a chance to see those?
It felt like we were at home. Immediately we were talking to the people, finding out what their roots were, why they were connected to Texas. No longstanding history with us. Just keeping the animals on the property, but it's so fun to see them. They're such majestic animals, and it made it feel like there was a little bit of Texas and out in bourbon country. So that was fun.
Awesome. And then Jim Beam. So Jim Beam, the largest producer, so the biggest place you guys went. Did it feel like overwhelming or too much there, or was it still like an awesome experience for you?
Jim Beam was really cool. This was one of the only ones that I knew we were going to go to because we always have Jim Beam in our house, and my in-laws have always been a big fan. So from the start, we told the SIP guys that Jim Beam is really one of the only places that is on our must-hit list. So they made sure that it was on our tour. And after going from big to small to big distilleries, we weren't quite sure what to expect, but we were expecting something, and you were immediately wowed going into their facility. They have this giant LED wall that kind of talks about the history and the different makers that have been a part of the Jim Beam brand. And then we just went upstairs to get our tasting, and again seeing the number of brands. I didn't realize how many brands Jim Beam owned or bottled under. So that was really cool. But I think just as great of an experience as we've had. They took amazing care of us and were obviously really knowledgeable to answer all of our questions about some of the different brands that we hadn't heard of. And you got to see a lot of things that you would never see at a liquor store or at a restaurant outside of Kentucky, including the bottle that we brought home. I've never seen this before, and we were really excited to have something different and unique come back home with us.
Yeah. And so you mentioned like the property at Makers. What was that property at Jim Beam like? If it is such a big facility, did it feel like industrial, or was the drive in like to that property, was it still pretty cool and more like what you were picturing for Kentucky?
It was still really picturesque, and, they have the iconic Jim Beam barn when you pull up, and there's, like, the big lake or pond right there and the giant sign where everybody's taking pictures, so it had that, like, authority to it of this is the brand, but you don't walk in and you don't feel like you're at, like, a manufacturing facility and that they're pumping out hundreds of thousands of bottles when they are, but it doesn't feel like that. It still feels like this is the barn on the Beam property, and this is where they've been doing it for years, and you just get to be a part of their history.
Awesome. So then after Jim Beam, it looks like you kind of finished up your day there. When you look back at that whole day, what was like your overall impression and what was your biggest surprise throughout that day?
Honestly, my biggest surprise was how much fun I had. I fully went into this thinking that it was going to be something for my husband and my in laws, and I was kind of just along for the ride, playing photographer and carrying some bottles to help them out. But I was able to learn a lot, and I was able to try bourbon in ways that I've never tried before because I never go and order it at a restaurant. It's not my preferred drink. So they really educated me on it and allowed me the experience to find something that I was able to enjoy. But it was so fun. Definitely the highlight of our trip. And I know my in laws and my husband are already itching to see on when we can go back. It was that great that we're already looking on when we can be back again.
Awesome. Well, that's great. And there's lots more to see. I mean, you guys, it sounds like you guys saw a lot. But there's always new distilleries opening and there's just so many different parts of the state to see and so many other historic brands to go and visit. So I know you had mentioned you ended up staying in Louisville and it kind of came at a recommendation. How was staying in Louisville? Had you ever been there? And did it meet expectations, exceed expectations? How was Louisville for you?
Yeah, Louisville was honestly a really pleasant surprise. We didn't know where we should stay coming out for the tour or what we should be doing. And again, had never been to Kentucky before. So when we asked the guys that sit on where we should stay to do the tour, they recommend Louisville to us, including where we found our hotel, which was really perfect, helping that planning side of me. But the town was really neat. We got a lot of recommendations back from our tour guide when we were driving around on what we should do, where we should go eat, what else is there during the time. So on our next day, we actually went to the Louisville Slugger Museum, which is probably one of the only things I knew about Louisville going in. That was so fun. I even had my little mini bat. You get your own bat when you're on the tour. That was really interesting. Again, just learning so much while we were there and had such a fun day there. And then we went to a couple restaurants, a couple bars. There was this really cool speakeasy. What was that called? Hell or High Water. That
Okay,
was
yeah.
so fun, and would have never found that on our own. I don't even know how your tour guides find it because it's just this random door down a hallway and you're in this really cool speakeasy.
Yeah, that place is great. I love going there. They do some really fun things with cocktails. But yeah, like you said, it's almost like down the backside of a building, not quite an alley, but the road behind a building, and then it's just a door. And then you're in this really cool restaurant. Did you guys stay in like the main bar area or go to the library section? Um,
We got a table back in the library section. I honestly felt like it was straight out of, like, Beauty and the Beast. It was Belle's library sitting back there, but their menu was extensive. They still had their, like, holiday pop-ups. Everything was a little holiday theme, which made it nice and cozy, but their bartenders were amazing. My husband loves to quiz bartenders and was asking for off the menu, really off the wall things, and they were able to create anything. We just had a fun little night hanging out there before we went back to our hotel to rest up after a really long day.
Cool. And I know they have these like seasonal punches that they rotate through, and you have to kind of like ask for them. They're on like the backside of the menu. Did you guys end up doing any of those? Because I always have such a fun time with that when I'm with a group.
Yeah, we did. So we had a couple of others with us that night when we were hanging out. So we decided to get one of their punches. It was really fun. They brought it out in like a vintage teapot. So at first I was like, oh, is
Oh,
this going to be hot? Like a hottie toddy? But it was a cool punch. And it came with the little tea glasses to drink out of. And I think like four of us had that. And then we ordered another round because it was so good. But they rotated out because I asked if we come back another day if we could have it. And they're like, it just depends on the bartender on staff on which one you're going to get.
nice. I mean, that sounds like a really cool experience. Aside from like, it seems like you enjoyed the cocktails. The experience really sounds unique
Yeah.
and awesome. And then you said you bounced around to a few different restaurants. Louisville is kind of not as recognized nationally as or internationally as some of these other cities like Chicago, LA, like Seattle, as far as like some of New York with some of their food choices. But how did you feel about like the food scene around Louisville and just around Kentucky in general? We didn't talk too much about the food you had at Five Brothers at Heaven Hill, other than I know the burger was a highlight for you. But how did everyone kind of feel about the food scene?
Yeah, coming from Dallas, we have such a restaurant scene here. We're always trying something different or new. So we do get a little spoiled back home. And going into Louisville, we weren't quite sure what to think about because, like you said, it's not really known for food. It's definitely known for the bourbon, but we were like, we're probably going to eat a lot of fried chicken or something because KFC. Um, but that's not what it was. We were so surprised by every restaurant that we went to. I mean, even Heaven Hill out on Bourbon Trail. The food was great. I mean, I had a burger. My husband had a chicken sandwich. There were salads. They had a wide variety, and everything was so good. Not just like, it's just a sandwich. It's a burger. But then even in Louisville, we went to this Cuban restaurant, La Bodega, or I'm probably
La Bodeguita de Mima, yeah, I've been
Yes,
there for
okay, I
sure.
knew you'd know what it was. That was another recommendation from the SIP tour, and that was so good. I actually grew up in Florida, so it was like a little taste of home having some real Cuban food again and just seeing the vibe of the restaurant. It's like this old house that they converted into a restaurant, and it was jam-packed the entire night on, like, a weeknight, so it was pretty crazy.
Awesome. Well, so you did some bourbon fun, you did some non-bourbon fun, you did some eating and drinking. It sounds like you guys really took advantage of all the things Kentucky has to offer. So, I know it was tough for you to really have your expectation because it wasn't really a trip you felt like you were planning for you. You felt like you were planning it for other people. Would you wanna come back to Kentucky? How did you feel about it?
I would absolutely love to come back, even since we've come home and have been taking out some of our bottles with some of our friends. We've been talking about that. It would be so fun to do, get a group of us to go out, rent a house, maybe 10 of us, and do a tour again because all of the husbands we know love to drink bourbon. Some of the wives do, but even the ones that don't, they'll to be like me. We'll get to learn a little bit more and just have a great time. It's something that's definitely good for a wide range of people there. We were talking to the different tour guides and they said that they get a lot of bachelor trips, which makes sense. I would highly recommend any guys trying to get a trip going that you should go there. But there were families with their kids on the tours, and then even people from a range of ages. So I could see us having fun no matter how we did it, whether we were with family, just the two of us, me and my husband, or bringing out a group of friends. And that's something that we really look for in a place that we want to go back to on. Can we continue to have fun? Does it feel like we're going to run out of things? And obviously, we're never going to run out of bourbon distilleries to go visit. It seems like there are a million and we barely scratched the surface. But beyond just doing the tour on Bourbon Trail, there was so much to do in Louisville, and it was just a lot of fun time to be there.
Awesome. Well, I really wanna thank you for taking the time, kinda sharing your experience, giving us that whole rundown from start to finish. I think that's the kind of information people can really use when they're getting started with their planning, if they are thinking about doing a trip. Um, because it was firsthand. It's what you felt like. You saw there's a lot of options for different distilleries, places to stay, where to go, and I think someone who just has it kind of fresh in their mind of what they just did and what was the most successful part of that trip for you is going to be really useful for other people. So I really wanted to thank you for taking the time and sharing this all with everybody.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on today. And like I said, thanks for taking us around on the tour. Our trip would not have been as memorable if it was not for the team at Seth. And like I said, we're trying to figure out when we can come back next, but maybe again in the winter, because that was so awesome to be on basically private tours the entire time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really appreciate it. You got to come see it kind of all the times of the year. You'll have to get out at some point when we've got the live horse racing because it's
Oh,
kind of like bourbon where it can feel unapproachable and like you don't really know a lot about it. But when you're there, if it's not like Derby and a super crazy week, it's really affordable to get to. And then it's just a lot of fun. It's a whole like different set of energy, even if you're not really a horse expert. And
absolutely.
that's one of our other things we're known for here. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jenny, for your time. We'll let you go now. But again, really just appreciate you being on here. For everybody else, have fun, be safe, and keep sipping.
All right. Thanks, Stephen.